I have a rebuttal to a posting that was made last week during the class. Unfortunately, Jim Ruxin is not yet here. So if he comes, I'm going to continue the conversation about angels. And the fact that somebody in this group put into the chat that all this conversation about angels is BS.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, I think BS means beyond scintillating. But whatever it is. So I want to have a brief moment with Jim before we actually leave. Okay, so that's good. Calendar. We have current events on February 21st. And looking forward to seeing you there. Things are happening. Risa just spoke with a friend of ours from Kfar Blum and the northern part of Israel this morning, and talking about the fact that she's been evacuated, a daughter has been evacuated, talking about how their lives are upside down in the north, and she is living in a situation in which you could say to Risa, yeah, well, so we hear explosions every day a few times, and we go on living. Okay, that's what they're living with. Okay, Friday, March 1st. This is a special plea from me to you. And what's unusual, when I make a special plea, I want money. This is not for money. On March 1st, Susan Rosenstein is being honored at Wilshire. And Susan was, for many, many years, music director at university, and now has a similar position at Wilshire, and she is being honored. So Friday evening, March 1st, I hope, I'm going to be there, Risa's going to be there. I hope that you will all be able to do that as well, because she is very much a part of our community.
Which temple, Rabbi?
This is at Resnick. It's all at Resnick now.
Resnick?
Yeah, it's all at Resnick now. I was sitting last night this was fascinating, next to a gentleman who will not go named, who was a member of university for many, many years. And the moment they moved everything to Irmis, he stopped attending. It was a religious protest of some sort. And last night was his first night back in synagogue. And what was lovely was how happy he was. Happy with the building, happy to be there. It was a very nice experience. Just checking, let's see, Cindy, anything?
Yeah, this coming Friday night, the 23rd, we're having a Shabbat dinner at Froman's at 6 o'clock. It's a family service, so we try to do our Shabbat dinners when it's a family service. Susie's chair of it, so if you want a seat, let her know. 6 o'clock, Froman's. It's a no host. They're very accommodating, and it's just a lovely time. We do a little Shabbat service at the beginning.
Yeah. Risa, did we make reservations? I can't hear you. You're muted. My wife is muted. Risa, you're muted.
Right now.
Oh, okay. So
I'll let Susie know.
Yeah,
I'll write to her.
We're looking
Okay.
there. It's not so much being with the women and the group for Shabbos. It's the sweet and sour cabbage soup. But
That's the best. I love it. I love it. I love it. Rabbi, could I put in a pitch for something?
Please.
You know, my husband and I very much want to honor Rabbi Leader, but neither one of us drives at night, and we don't drive down into the downtown we wonder if anybody is going. Is there going to be a bus that's taking a lot of us senior citizens, or is there room in somebody's car that can take us? Because we'll feel very bad if we have to miss it, but we will miss it if we don't get transportation. That's all I want to say.
You know what? I'm going to ask the question on Monday if there could be a bus for senior
Oh.
citizens.
That would be wonderful. Yeah.
But if anyone can respond to Doris's request, please be directly in touch with her, please.
Thank you. Whoever can do that.
Okay, checking in, and Natalie has found her name, so that's good. Hi, Natalie. The checking in, anything happening to you? That we should know about? Hi, Larry.
It's Ray speaking. I'll put myself in line. Mine isn't the cheeriest one, but it's not an imminent disaster. But we want to put someone cheerier after so that we can go on an uplift afterward.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Please try me again.
Oh, I'm so sorry. This is Ray, and I'll just jump into it, but I'll try to be brief. Mine is a disappointing news, but it touches on both of us. Rabbi Stan already knows a bit about this. I'm in 2 labor unions. He does not know that now both of them have voted to release so-called ceasefire agreements that are very anti-Israel. And the new one is way worse than the other one. And the other one was a huge problem. The new one is a screed, and it's horrifying. And these are not unknown unions. One is a division of the UAW, the other is a division of the IAT-SE. And I have amassed for the second one a group of approaching 50 members to push back against a horrifying statement that the Animation Guild was taken over by a rogue group on a low attendance night to force a vote to release. And there's a lot of pushback against it. And the union does not want this at all. And they are trying through parliamentary means to hold a larger meeting to try to encourage high participation and to defeat it. That big meeting is on Tuesday night. I will ask moral support and prayers, if you do that, from this group for turning this around before it becomes public. It is hideous. And I will also warn my friends here, whether you're with union groups or with other groups, there is a very horrifying tide against Israel and Jews.
We're going to have to move forward, Ray. We're going to have to move forward. But
I'm so sorry. That really was my last sentence, and I am sorry. Just folks, be on the alert. Folks, be brave.
okay, and Ray, on behalf of everybody, we are ready to offer you physical sanctuary if you need to come and hide.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's the best I can do. Okay, but it's a worthy, great fight. Any other personal things?
Rabbi, may I say something? I was listening to Doris about the bus, but you changed to Resnick, and I have a driver that will take me to the Target on Wayburn. From there, I need a lift up the hill. If anybody's going that way, so I can come to services, because I use the LA car service. I tell them I'm getting a prescription filled, and they give me a free ride. And that's to Wayburn, right by Target, right up the hill by UCLA. Just up the hill is 10 minutes away. If anybody goes that way, let me know. I use a ride.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear.
To get going into our text. It's a very interesting thing, very interesting. That is to say, it's almost a. I didn't say hello to Sue Casa because she wasn't there before. Hi, Sue. It's like a single themed Sedra. That doesn't happen very often. There are other things mixed in, but it is a single themed Sedra. The word truma itself shares the same root with lifting up. A truma is a gift. So the Sedra begins with a call for contributing to what will be the building of the basic religious structures needed to move through the desert. So Moses puts out a call for truma, for a system of contributions, and then the rest of the Sedra gives details about what's to be built. And if you're in the construction industry, Ray, I don't know if they had a union, but if you're in the construction industry, it could be fascinating. Yeah, how many inches this was, how this was put together, but that's what the Sedra is mainly about. And it was mentioned last night by Rabbi Leader, and it'll be mentioned this morning by every rabbi in the world, that in this Sedra, near the beginning, is God's command to Moses and the people, Va'asuli mikdash v'shachanti betocham. Make for me a mikdash. Do you hear the word kadosh? Mikdash, kadosh. Make for me a sanctuary that I might dwell among them. One of the most quotable quotes, one of the most important lines, and subject to all kinds of interpretation. Va'asuli mikdash. My first comment is that you have the description of a building program filled with gold and fresh cut lumber and copper and brass. You have a building program with materials that we might not assume wanderers in the Sinai desert had with them. Now, maybe Amazon dropped it off. I don't know, but it's so unlikely. So you begin to wonder, and I'm going to be posing a few questions here today. You begin to wonder, how did they come to describe such lavish worship instruments? Where did it come from? Why is this described this way? I'm interested in your thoughts. You read about the ark being constructed. It's gold on the outside and on the inside. I mean, the menorah with gold and this and that and that. What's happening in this text? Donna.
Well, apparently the Israelites raided the Egyptians on the way out and took a lot of gold and silver and I guess dolphin skins to put on the tabernacles.
Why are you giggling?
Because it's sort of funny.
It's funny because it doesn't seem reasonable, right? I mean,
Correct.
Okay, it's there. And that's one of the ways in which the rabbis explain, well, they borrowed it from the Egyptians, or what I like even better, since we're talking about labor unions, this was delayed payment for all of the slavery, right? So they had an accrued income waiting for them in an IRA, and they paid them off when they left. Not likely. Fine. Where did these designs come from? An ark with two cherubim facing each other, wings, right? Where does this come from? What is this telling us about how the authors of the text understood religious objects to be? How did they get that? Howard.
I think that maybe this was written more like in the 6th century, 500, more than 500 years after the time being described, 800 years. And it was really just, and when they were about restoring the temple and maybe creating the temple that was never like the previous temple that had never really existed. And this was describing the ideal temple in Jerusalem.
Okay, may I, oh, okay, Marvin Harv, whoever, which,
I'm wondering if we can read this as this is what we should, that it's not real, that there was never an actual ark, but that it was what we should aspire to in our holiness.
I'm sorry, I saw the ark. Raiders, I saw
you
the
were
ark,
that
so
old.
I reject that. Does the word syncretism mean anything to you? Syncretism? Anyone come up with a working definition of syncretism? S-Y-N. Syncretism? There it is. Anybody? By the way, I know we're alone, and I know no one is listening. And I was speaking with an unnamed professional yesterday. And that unnamed professional and I were talking about the possibility of my adding another course or two in the offerings of Wilshire Boulevard Temple. And that professional, whose name I forget, said to me, well, you have to be careful because your group that came over from university is very intellectual. I'm going to leave that right there, okay?
That's good to know.
And I don't want you to feel good, okay? Those, and but this group is viewed with a great deal of suspicion. We got to watch ourselves. Now, syncretism. What does that mean?
Something alike, does it have to do with
I'm sorry?
no, does it have to do with being alike, anything that is similar, synchronism? I don't know.
Yes, it has to deal with being similar. Syncretism, to be very simple, is an overlapping of one culture, one tradition, one system over the other, and a borrowing. I mean, I know that's not a scientific way, but a borrowing. So that in the founding of Christianity, there's much syncretism, that is to say, much that comes over from Judaism and is reworked. And over the centuries, syncretism runs back and forth. So, for example, when the rabbis are discussing the cherubim on the ark, okay? When you hear the word cherub, what do you envisage? What do you see? What's in your head? A cherub. Oh, okay. Marina is going like this. So, okay, that's an accurate description. Steve?
Kind of one of those chubby little white angels that you see in Christian art.
The point is very well taken. The cherub as a baby, a little baby, sweet face, not only reflects all of my grandchildren in their earliest stage, they have all moved out of that stage, but the cherub, as described by the rabbis in the Middle Ages when they tried to describe the ark, they borrowed the Christian understanding of what a cherub looked like. So Christian iconography began to understand cherubim as little babies or whatever. And then when you have medieval Jewish commentators describing the face of the cherubim on the ark, lo and behold, that's what they look like. Do you feel the syncretism that goes on there? And there's so much stuff like that. I'm reminded of an encounter that Abram had with the high priest of Salem in the desert, and the high priest gave to Avram bread and wine. Boy, and on that the challah industry was built, right? And so borrowing goes back and forth. So the images are reflecting what the Israelites saw, actually not Israelites, the inhabitants of Israel and Judea, what they saw when they were in captivity or in the presence of other cultures. Many of the images of what is understood to have been the furnishings of the first temple are borrowings from neighboring cultures. And when it came time to put down in the Torah text by those editors, they put down what they viewed to be the quintessential equipment needed for a really great sanctuary. Which means that what's described here just in no way can be construed as having been in the desert. Maya.
This feels like a point where I would ask what happened to the rule that we should be different from all other cultures and communities.
First of all, hi, Maya. It's good to talk with you.
Hi.
You know, Maya, actually, your question is good, and it points to a bigger question. In the description of the tabernacle, you have woven cloths, and those cloths have images on them. So that if you take what is said literally in the Torah text, there were images in the tabernacle. What about, expanding Maya's question, Jewish attitudes about no images? The rabbis, when they try to weasel out of this, said, please notice that those images were only on the curtains in the inside of the Holy of Holies so that the people couldn't see it anyway. Okay, Tamara, please.
Yeah, I think Maya's question is really wonderful. And actually the Mishkan or the Mikdash in Exodus that we're reading about is both a synchronism and a counter image in creating a difference, because the borrowed cultures are presenting huge structures that are permanent and large. And the Mikdash that this imagines is portable. And it's built by the people. It's not built by kings. It's not built by leaders. Everyone is part of it. So while borrowing imagery, it's also transforming it and making it unlike anything else, and emphasizing the difference.
Okay, so the difference is there and the similarities are there and they coexist. Maya, I once knew a rabbi in St. Louis who understood that a Jewish clergyman in those days, that's all it was, male, should look as other to the community as priests and some ministers do. So he adopted a collar and a whole outfit that you would think he was a Catholic or an Episcopal priest, except that he had Hebrew lettering across the front of the situation. It didn't catch on. It didn't catch on. He kept that. Let me go one step further in. The rabbis understood without saying it that these descriptions had to be more than just a physical architectural commandment. And what goes on, and folks, this is what's key about the Sedra. What goes on is everything about the construction is viewed by the rabbis as metaphor. And that you have to look at the instructions not just as a way of, oh, the bars had to be this. Let me give you an example. Let's see here. Okay, I'll use this example. When it talks about the building of the ark, it says that the ark has to have rings on the corners. And the rings are to have wooden staves put through the rings. The interesting thing is, those wooden staves are never to be removed. So even if the ark is sitting in the tabernacle as it is, it has rings and staves for portability. The rabbis make a big deal about this. Do you want to try to figure out what they're going to say? How did the rabbis understand the rings on the ark as metaphor? Okay, pushing back. Tamara, do you want to jump in? No? Okay, Donna, please. Yes, go.
Okay, so the rings are permanent. They are going to stay with the physical ark.
Yes.
But it's open to being carried by the people of any given time, because you're not going to have a wooden stave that's going to last forever and ever. So that piece of wood is particular to the people of that time. So it's the idea that each generation has an obligation to carry the tradition.
I love it. I love it. You know, in a future time, use that as sermon. It's a great sermon, but it's the right? It's the metaphor. It's what the rabbis did with the architectural design. Every generation has to carry it, but there was also something else, because this was written, as Steve Miller said earlier, later on. Jewish life involves a lot of wandering. And they talk about that too. The ark is a symbol of that. Okay, Donna, then Howard.
I was going to say about the ark and the cherub. We were talking about the angels. That's the wooden the ark was carried. But I think the people every generation we carry, because Adonai said, my people are inhabited by my praises. So when we're singing to God, I think those angels that were around the ark are with us. I mean, that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Howard.
I read some descriptions of how Bedouins, including at the current day, have a portable sanctuary, have a tradition of in certain season of the year, traveling to a certain meeting place where they set up their for religious festivals. They have poles, they have goatskin coverings, they have rings, and that's where how they do worship. So this is something that maybe the people who wrote this knew about.
Yes, excuse me, I didn't hear the beginning. Which people?
Bedouins.
Bedouin. Okay. 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 Thank you. So there's another metaphor here. The rabbis read the text, and our text says that the ark was golden on the inside and the outside. I have been bored to tears by how often I have used that metaphor, unfortunately, at a funeral. And I would use the expression toho kavoro, the deceased was as beautiful on the inside as the deceased was on the outside. And that's the language of the ark. Do you understand what I'm saying? That the metaphors that arise out of this construction have been huge in Jewish life, even though the text, when you read it and just read it, is like reading an architectural design. How many of us would, go rejoicing over that? Except the architects, and I respect architects. That's just another example. Everything of another thing. What went into the Aron HaKodesh? What went into Donna Shapiro is going like this, and I'm supposed to interpret that she says the tablets of the 10 Commandments. Right? How did I do? Sounds like how many words? Fine. Terrific. Okay. But they, not just the tablets of the 10 Commandments. What else was in Sukkasa?
The shards from the first trip up the mountain.
Now, again, if you're looking to be rabbis looking for sermon topics, right? What is the tradition that we carry with us? The broken shards of ancient time. Do I have to do the whole sermon? And, the tablets that lead us into the future. It's wonderful. The rabbis make a big deal out of the shards were never discarded. Reformed Jews, remember that. The shards were never discarded, even though they may no longer be used. And it's one of the real things that as a Reform rabbi, I've had a struggle with people always. We don't do that anymore means I have no need to study it. No, it doesn't mean that. We keep the shards, we understand them, we live by the new. I see Steve, Howard. Steve, where are you?
Well, I was just going to answer your question, which has been answered.
Oh, so much for intuition. Thank you. Howard, did you have your hand up?
No.
Okay. All right, good. So that's what's going on here. The descriptions that we read in this text are an amalgam of what our people experienced and saw from surrounding major cultures, and as Tamara pointed out, made particularly reflective of Jewish culture. Brad.
Well, I'm coming back to the metaphor issue. Rabbi, did I understand you correctly? You said they left the staves in the rings at all times?
Yes.
And what is that a metaphor of?
Well, first of all, it's a straight architectural obligation. Don't pull the staves out. Metaphor is what the rabbis did. Donna talked about it. We talked about it, that the permanent wandering nature of the Jewish people, or that each generation must learn to carry the ark by itself. Those are just teaching lessons, because the rabbis could not believe that God would give the blueprints without the blueprints having specific teaching points. Not good enough to just do that. Okay, let me, Donna?
I was just going to say, I agree with everything you're saying, but that carrying on for generation and generation. Well, like when we marched around Jericho 7 times and blew the shofar and the wall came down, we were singing and praising. Miriam, when she crossed the sea, was singing with tambourines, and the water well followed her. We sing, and God says, I inhabit the praises of my people. When we sing, God is there. He's with us in them, with the angels. And those angels that were around the ark, they're with us now. They don't stay in one place. They travel with us everywhere we go.
Fine. I don't want to get into angels again, because someone else is going to write BS into the chat. And
Thank you, Rabbi.
The funny thing is, I didn't see it because I can't read the chat at this point. So Risa came in afterwards and said, "Did you see what was happening?" I don't know what was happening. An unnamed person who specializes in movies said that everything that you just said is BS, and apparently has trouble with angels. Okay,
that's
Merle.
okay. I love him anyway.
I was just going to say that shards are still very relevant. When our camps burned down and we traveled to, I think now we're on our 3rd location for summer camp, shards from broken pottery, broken buildings, whatever, were collected from the fire site from the 2 camps after the mudslides, and they made a holder for a new menorah to go from site to site. And, we all remember that when we see those menorahs. The menorah is on the, whatever they create a sanctuary or a bima out of for services and for tefillah. So those shards are still a part of our lives today.
That's a great story. That's something I didn't know.
Yes.
I like that.
It started 4 or 5 years ago, I think, and it's been very important.
Super. Risa?
I have a question. The question is, do we have any conversation about if the shards and the final so-called 10 commandments were identical, or if there were differences? And the other thing that I was thinking about is the portability of the that we experienced in India with the Hindu families having a portable, if you will, sanctuary in their homes always.
That raised, yes, and that raises a fascinating question. We're not going to go into it today, but can you think for a moment what you need for a sanctuary to be appropriate for you?
Well,
we walked in to Resnick last night and had to sit in the back because I was experiencing a few problems. So we sat way in the back, which is never where we sat. And the expanse of the new construction was amazingly more impressive from where we sat. When we were sitting up front, it didn't speak the same way. We can't have a discussion, which I had put in my agenda, but not going to do it. Think about the Koreatown building, the massive, extraordinary Hollywood built, literally Hollywood built construction with the dioramas and everything else. Think about Resnick. Think about other synagogues and churches. We have expectations of holy places. They should touch us in a certain way. Our daughter Aviva was at the cathedral downtown last week. Not to daven, but she was there for a ceremony, and the space spoke to her. Have you had experiences? And again, I'm not going to have time. Have you had experiences of going into so-called sacred spaces that did not speak to you? And other spaces which are not necessarily grandiose, but deeply spoke of spirituality. Risa?
Well, you kind of changed the question in between, but the answer to that is some of the most spiritual places have been like, the first thing that came to my mind was the small sanctuary that was built at, I'm going to say Kfar Blum now, it's not what I mean, where we stayed as young people with the Arab disadvantaged children in Israel.
That's so sweet.
It doesn't matter what it was, but that place was built by WRJ, and I loved walking into that very simple space. The other thing I was thinking about was, you could say, where have you walked in that was holy? And I just kind of looked around the house for a minute. The house is a holiness. I just look around and there's so much Judaica in this house. Not just books, but all the Kaddish cups and the various Chanukiot and the Shabbat candles.
What about me?
Oh.
Okay, forget that.
But anyway, that we do build a sanctuary in our homes, and our
What do
house
they
is
call?
supposed to be a sanctuary.
What do they call a Jewish home that is a Jewish home? A mikdash ma'at.
That's what I was thinking.
A small sanctuary, and thank you for that. Okay, Larry.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about it, it feels like almost every culture around the world has a impulse to create beautiful things and beautiful spaces in connection with their religion or their spirituality. And this text feels to me to be a little bit of a redirection. If you're not going to build, create idols or build golden calves, this is the thing that we're going to build that's special and beautiful.
You got an A from Tamara on that comment. I could tell that was happening. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So let me just read this because, just to make the point, it happens to be on page 546, but you don't have to chase it. Then make the rings, make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. So the wooden staves are covered with gold. Then insert the poles into the rings on the side walls of the ark for carrying the ark. Now here, verse 15. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark. They shall not be removed from it, right? That was the point I was making. It's there. It's permanent for all the reasons that we've talked about. To me, this is really terrific. A few more things. If you read the Sedra this week, you'll notice the use of colors. Colors in the making of the hangings and the covers, the woven materials, and the colors that were also reflected in the metals that were used. And if you look at it carefully, it's what we would call in Hebrew, ma'alin bikdusha. There is a pathway toward holiness, and certain colors are more privileged than other colors, and certain metals are more privileged than other metals. So gold is obviously the most privileged of all in terms of the metals. The construction takes place to move people into a sacred space, getting more and more sacred until it finally gets to the Holy of Holies, the Ark, the gold. I remember the first time I ever went into a Greek Orthodox church. The Greek Orthodox have, and I'm not expert in this, I just picked it up. The Greek Orthodox have kind of a back room to the sanctuary into which no one but the priests can enter. It is, you go in, and it gets more restricted until you get to the key place. The colors are selected. The metals are selected. Everything, excuse me, about the physical setup is designed to teach you that you are getting closer to the holy place. I am going to share an old man's kvetch. Here is my old man's kvetch. Everything about new construction in synagogues is aimed at lowering the bima and bringing the rabbi, cantor people into closer contact with Amcha, with the people. There's a little part of me that regrets the loss of a, Donna, you're laughing at me, that regrets the loss of a physical determination of difference. Okay, it's just because I'm an old kvetch. I would like to believe that the Ark, the Torah, the center of worship are still other than regular stuff. And I'm okay. You can flame away and attempt to destroy me. But when I first when I first served a congregation after the army, I was in the world of robes and the cantor's hat, right? And everything was different. Now, I don't want to, well, part of me yearns for being
That.
treated as holy and special, but that's pretty much not going to happen anymore. But one of the shards that I'm holding on to is that there is a difference between a sanctuary and an auditorium. I see a couple of yeses and some vigorous no's, and people are getting ready to throw things. But
Not me.
Brad, please, Brad.
Well, Rabbi, as Reformed Jews, don't we tend to believe more that holiness is not in a place, but in our relationships with others, with God, that it's not place dependent?
I knew I was getting into trouble. I got into trouble with angels, and now with this. If you're going to push me, Brad, and you have every right to, I do not fully subscribe that all that there really is, or the peak of the Jewish experience, is in relationships, seeing the other, Martin Buber, I, thou, relating. For me, the physical space can help prepare us for encounters with the divine. Some of the greatest music ever written is music to welcome people into the church. Great music. When you hear the music, you feel a difference. This is a different place. When you see an ark, Torahs, the menorahs, there is a message that you get, Brad, which doesn't supersede human relationships and touching the soul of another. But a sanctuary properly designed should be able to help us sense that what we are doing is more than ordinary.
Baruch Hashem.
Well, I don't know. Brad, come back at me, please, please. I'm struggling.
No,
with this.
Rabbi, there are 3 other people who are waiting to talk.
Yeah, but I want you to have one more push.
No, thank you, Rabbi. I've had my say.
Okay, thank you very much. Mara, Harv, whoever.
Well, I agree with what you just said.
Uh-oh.
And I think that a sanctuary needs to enhance your connection, your feeling of nearness to God. I think you can do that in a number of other ways, not just through creating a sanctuary. I think that's why we meditate. We try to create that connection, that sense of holiness with God. But it's also, I just have to say, one of the reasons, and I think we disagree on this, one of the reasons I like the fact that the new sanctuary at Resnick permits me to see the Torahs, and that those Torahs are lit in a way that I feel a nearness to God. It's why when I hear the cantor sing Yehiyu Ratzon, that it brings tears to my eyes and I feel closer to God.
I, I'm going to go to Howard and then we have to stop. This is so important. This is so beautiful and fundamental. Howard, Steve, can you do 1 minute quick things, and I've got to get to Kaddish?
Sure.
I just wanted to say something about holy spaces or sanctuaries. From my own experience, one of the most amazing spaces I've ever been in is in Cordoba in Spain. And it's a 500-year-old Jewish synagogue which somehow survived. It was actually a stable for many centuries, but it's been all cleaned up. And it's a perfect cube. You go into it. It's a perfect cube, length, width, and height, lined with stone, and it has the place for the Torah is in a niche built into the wall, and it really makes shivers run down your spine. At least I thought, just to be in that space.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
not
you.
the level of anything having to do with philosophy.
I've never been there, and I'm sorry for that. Steve?
I was just going to say, I was surprised to hear that you missed the robe, because the robe was really an takeaway and an imitation from Protestantism.
We call that syncretism.
But what I find, the classic Reform congregations I belonged to as a young child, the rabbis wore those robes, and there wasn't a talit in the building. So I'm surprised that you long for that.
I didn't say that I long for it. I did say that I noticed it.
You just don't like to mingle with the hoi polloi. That's what it is.
If you have to know, Donna, I was ordained and you haven't been yet. And yes, I like the no, come on. Yeah, thank you. You see what happens? Okay. Yeah, that's enough. I get the point. And genuflecting is really very, very nice. I bet that's not happened at Wilshire Boulevard class recently. Okay.
Stanley, let us not forget how my mother reacted to the first time you put on the robe.
Let's leave me. What?
She said, you look great and you feel wonderful, and it's very important, but you look like the devil.
Are we done?
Yep.
Okay. With that, we're done. Folks, thank you for today. Read this Sedra and sense that the rabbis have built a world around it. They really did. They built a world around it. And okay, we're going to Kaddish now. Those who have passed away during the past month: Minu Sahati Berliani, Nina Deutsch, Kay Earhart, Lenore Lottie First, Aaron Glazer, Shelley Hauser, Shirley Lundy, Sarah Samrai, Patty Silver, Jessica Sobel, Paula Sunshine. Your sites that have occurred during the past week: Ann Abrams, Norman Abrams, Camila Dar, Rachel Almo, Lucy Armel, Theodore Arnovitz, Luna Benishai, Jean Burrowfine, Homopun Bina, Evelyn Black, Fanny Blatt, Saul Block, Rose Borroway, Estelle Bravman, Virginia Balukian, Charles Shaskas, Michael Kofeld, Benjamin Cohn, Robert DeRuy, Max Dole, Barry Dean, Michael Ellis Jr., Lawrence Feinstein, Douglas Feld, Charles Fenton, Floyd Sidney Fearman, Robin Fisher, Lucas Foster, Herbert Frankel, Marvin Frankel, Albert Garber, Benjamin Gelfond, Sam Gilbert, Bessie Ginsburg, Donald Glabman, Jean Glass, Ginger Glazer, Betty Rubin Glucken, William Green, Martin Greenberg, David Grover, James Hartnett, Daniel Helsler, Alan Harvey, Milton Heskell, Lala Lee Jameson, Max Kamens, Mary Kay, Leon Kent, Ernest Klein, Peter Copelson, Flora Coit, Shirley Landsman, Eva Lane, Monty Albert Lauder, Adrian Lee, James Levitch, Edna Levine, Ronald Levine, Sarah Levine, Dottie Levinson, Corey Levy, Marco Levy, Ann Loeb, Ilona Marson, Augusta Marks, Arnold Mass, Wayne Myers, Edith Miller, Irving Miller, Noreen Nelson, Tadji Newman, Daniela Ortiz Vivesh, Andrea Lynn Pennington, Leslie Perlov, Louis Peters, Dorothy Balsiger Phelps, Edward Phillips Sr., Gail Pricer, Eudice Polger, Esther Redinger, Shirley Ribakov, William Rogers, Sally Ralston, Sarah Rosen, Sonia Rosenblum, Melba Ruth, Rudy Solomons, Joseph Samos, Avi Gross Schaefer. Wow. Sue Schneider, Betty Schulman, Rose Schwimmer, Hal Seeger, Samuel Schaffer, Ann Schumann, Samuel Sims, Saul Stan, Miriam Spurtis, Robert Spond, Jeffrey Ryan Stern, Craig Allen Tucker, Jesse Uslin, Myron Veron, Martin Wagmeister, Alan Cusack Weinberger, Sam Yesko, Inga Zelkowitz, Dorothy Zucker. If there are other names to be remembered at this time, please speak their names out loud or carry them in your hearts. We also remember those who died in defense of the United States, those who died in defense of the state of Israel, those who perished through senseless acts of terror and horror, those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. We embrace them all and we say, Yitgadal, Yitgadal, Shemei Rabbah, Bialma Divra Chirute, Biamlich Malchute, B'chayechon Uvyomechon, V'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Uvizman Kari Vimru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mavarach, Le'olam Le'olmei Almaya, Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudisha, Berichu, Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata, Tush B'chata V'nechamata, Damiran Bi'alma V'imru, Amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chayim, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. May God, who makes peace in the high places, make peace in our hearts, make peace in our homes, make peace in the household of Israel, make peace among all the families and nations of earth. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Folks, this was beautiful. Bruce, good to see you joining us. Have a wonderful Shabbat, everybody. Sending you love. And remember how you were described, because you really are that good. Thank you very, very much. Shabbat Shalom. Love you.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you all. Have a wonderful week.
You too. Love you. Mwah.
Shabbat Shalom.